Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're so grateful that you're here tonight. We're also grateful for the fact that you're volunteering to be part of this important Board of Canvassers program. We started this program in 2020 when none of us knew what Board of Canvassers did, why they were important, or why they ultimately led up to election certification. But boy, we sure do know the facts now, and our program has gained in notoriety because we have people from all over the state watching it, as well as national organizations as well. Even the Department of State has commended us for this program because there is no other source that is uniformly observing the Board of Canvassers on this kind of a routine, up close and personal basis. So we hope you all feel valued. We certainly value you and your contributions here, and it's important to all of us when your reports help us identify something that might be amiss with various precincts now. Sorry, I got muted there. When your reports give us information about issues at the polling place or at the boardroom that are unusual, or when precincts are not getting balanced, when you help us identify those and we elevate that problem, hopefully we can stop any issues from preventing the certification. So it is super important that we have you, and we appreciate your eyes and ears in the field. As you know, we are trying to do all 83 counties this year, and we're very grateful not only for our league members, but for all of our other members from other groups that are here helping us to support this program. I'm going to go over just one form before we turn this program over to Mark Brewer, who is our wonderful attorney, who is going to share with you information about the Board of Canvassers. Hold on just a moment. Let me share my screen. For those of you who registered for this Zoom meeting early, I tried to send these materials out to everybody yesterday. If you didn't get them, you'll get them tomorrow, because we'll resend them with a recording of the Zoom meeting. These are the guidelines that we need all of our observers to follow. They're not that complicated. If you're in an observer corps at your local league, it's very similar to that. We watch, we listen, we ask an occasional question of the Board of Canvassers, but all in all, we're not there to give an opinion, to speak in a partisan way, or to chat with our neighbor about anything that comes up during the process. These are the requirements that we ask you to adhere to. We ask that you wear a league pin or a name badge, just because we want to have you identified as part of the League of Women Voters observer team. All of our clerks have been sent a letter by Christina and I indicating that our observer team would be at their county in the days following the election. So they won't be surprised to see anyone there from the league. These are public meetings, as Mark will tell you, so anybody can be there. But I think the fact that we as a league introduce ourselves and let people know that we're there to watch the election process makes a difference with the clerks. I probably got about 15 responses to that email from various clerks just saying, thank you for letting us know, and we're so glad that The league is part of this election process. We welcome you. We're happy to have you. So there should be no pushback from this, but we do want you to be identified as a league on the league team. If you don't have a league badge or a pin, you can make one, and I'll give you a template for that. But also I have some stick-on name badges like this. I'm going to put it up towards the camera so you can see it. If you would like a couple of these, I would be happy to put them in the mail. I promise to get them in the mail tomorrow. If you would like them, a couple, put your name and address in the chat and I'll get them out to you tomorrow. Going down our list of requirements or our guidelines here, we do ask that you complete a form at the end of the shift, and we're going to do that after Mark speaks because it'll make more sense to you. There are several phone numbers here on number 5. Myself, Christina, and Sarah Wirtz, who is our project manager. Later on, when we're not screen sharing anymore, we'll introduce Sarah because she has been an invaluable partner in this project this year. She found and developed the platform that we are using for registration that has been working so well, and we're just so grateful for her help. And she knows as much about this program as Christina and I at this point, so she can help you with any questions. Number 6, if you are ever challenged as to why you are there, we really don't think you will be, but you can just indicate that you are with the league and you're an observer. We ask that you not speak publicly, and there really isn't an opportunity for you to do that, but we wanted to make it clear that this is a watching and listening program, not a speaking opportunity. And again, even if you have someone next to you who is there doing the same thing you are, please be careful what you say, especially any partisan comments, because we don't want anything getting back to the board members or to anybody else who might be listening. So please be very conscious of the fact that other people might be listening. I'm going to let Mark take this away now because he has a lot more information than I do. Mark Brewer is an election attorney in Michigan and has wonderful credentials and knows more about the Board of Canvassers than we ever will. He has been a wonderful asset to the League of Women Voters, and he certainly his participation in our program tonight and last week as a training host has been invaluable to us. So I know we've got 6 screens open, but Mark, if you could, I can't even see you, but if you could identify yourself, I know you'll pop up on screen number 1. Take it away.
Thank you, Paula, for that kind introduction. I want to thank all of you league members for all the wonderful things that the league has done over the years and is doing now and that you're helping with, and all of you who are not league members. I know you are all doing everything you can to protect democracy because that really is at stake in this election, and that's what this program is all about. Some of you have done this work before, so I apologize. We're going to start at a very basic level and assume nobody has attended one of these meetings or done these observations. And again, as Paula said, you are playing a critical role. You are the eyes and ears of the people, and there are millions of us in Michigan who believe in democracy and want to make it work and want to make sure that it isn't sabotaged. And one of the places that we unfortunately learned that could occur in 2020 is at these county boards. As Paula said, in the past, nobody knew what these boards did. Sometimes when I would go to these meetings, I'd be the only person there because nobody else knew or cared. And that's the way it should be, frankly. But unfortunately, we find ourselves now in a very contentious situation. And these boards are going to be one of the points of contention after the election. So again, thank you for your willingness to do what you're going to do. So let me give you a little background on these boards. I don't know, some of you might remember, but some of us have read about, Michigan had a very contentious series of recounts back in the 1950s surrounding a couple of the elections of Soapy Williams. And it was very clear at that point that the state was Republican controlled, that the canvassing system, the election reviews and system, was so dominated by the Republican Party that there was a real risk of partisan interference in the election results. And so, to everybody's credit in Michigan, there was a major reform made to that process in the mid-50s. And that's where these county boards of canvassers originated. And they have worked very well in Michigan up until 2020. People knew their roles, they didn't play partisan politics, and they took their jobs very seriously. Unfortunately, that started to change in 2020, and that's why we're here tonight. So these are 4-member bipartisan boards, county boards of canvassers, in every county in the state. The members are appointed to 4-year terms, and they are staggered. That appointment comes via the County Board of Commissioners. The appointments are made in September of the off year. So everybody you'll be observing this year was either appointed last year, 2021, or back in 2019. And so they're there during their 4-year tenure. It takes 3 members of the board, as you would expect under parliamentary procedure, to take action. And that was intentional. The goal is that these boards should always act in a bipartisan fashion. In my experience, 99.9% of the time, they act unanimously, as they should. But again, it takes 3 members of a 4-member board to take action. Their principal function is, after every election, to review the results in every precinct in the county which had an election. Now, sometimes if you have special elections or city elections, they will only review those results, obviously. But after next week's election, these boards in every county will be reviewing every precinct's results in the state. We'll go into the details about what they actually review in a few moments. But that's their basic job after every election. They're an important cog in our election administration machinery. None of these board members, the election inspectors, or participate in elections on election day in terms of administration. They are really independent of that process, and they provide this check on the process in the wake of the election. Now, typically, because this is a lot of work to go over all these precinct results, the board is assisted by the county clerk. And in most counties, frankly, the county clerk leads this effort. These boards are part-time. These are people are not full-time workers at all. They assemble for this important function only as needed. And the county clerk is assisted by her or his staff, as well as the local clerks and their staffs, in terms of assembling the material and working with the board through this canvassing process. So let's talk a little bit about the calendar, how this all works. The election is Tuesday. The Secretary of State expects we'll have complete unofficial results. And again, stress this, everything that's reported next week after the election is unofficial. By sometime Wednesday, I think within 24 hours. By law, these boards must start their process, must have a meeting on either Wednesday or Thursday. No later than Thursday are they to assemble and begin their work. As Paula mentioned, these are public bodies. So they are subject to the Open Meetings Act, which means that there will be public notice posted of when and where the board will meet. In many counties, that may be posted already. Counties do that in a variety of ways, obviously. Some online, some put a piece of paper on a door or a bulletin board, but you can find out in advance when and where the board will be meeting. Now, I just said they're subject to the Open Meetings Act. However, there is no official role for anybody to challenge what is going on. They are public meetings, which people can observe, but there's no right to talk. Any of the boards will have public comment, either at the beginning or at the end, and that's fine. But unlike what may happen in a polling place with a challenger, for example, nobody has a right to challenge or question what's going on. People are only entitled to observe and not to disrupt in any way the important function of these boards. So you should check with the county clerk and find out when and where the board will begin its meetings starting next Wednesday or Thursday. So let's talk about a little bit about how the process works. As you can imagine, every county in the state, they develop their kind of own culture about how the board functions. In some counties, the board members are kind of hands off. You know, once the process starts, they start their meeting and then they start to go through the materials. They don't participate very much. You know, they may observe. Some may actually not be there at all until the process is done. And other counties are very hands-on. That's been the culture in my county of Macomb. Very hands-on. And oftentimes they'll break into teams, right? There'll be a board member and a staffer and whoever else is necessary to make the work go faster. Each team will take a precinct, work through it, and then move on to the next until every precinct has been reviewed. And you'll see this when you show up at the meeting as to how the culture operates in your county in terms of trying to get this work done. Now, these boards have 2 weeks from election day to get their jobs done. And that's a very firm deadline. So that means by November 22nd, they must finish canvassing all the results in all the precincts in their county. That's very important because the next step in this process is that the State Board of Canvassers, which is structured similarly, bipartisan 4-member board, will meet on November 28th, and they will certify the entire set of state elections. And only at that point are the election results in Michigan official, and people can ask for recounts, for example. Now, that's the remedy here. These boards, as I'll talk about in a moment, don't have the authority to do anything other than what I'm about to describe. But if people have questions or concerns, they think the results are wrong, they have a recount remedy after the process of certification and canvass is over. So let's talk a little bit about the process. And correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, I don't think they have the materials I'm about to discuss, or did you send those out in advance?
We did give them out in advance, but I'd be happy to share the screen with that Canvas checklist. Would that be helpful?
Please, thank you. Okay, so a little background here. The Secretary of State, and this goes back decades, to at least Dick Austin, has created a very extensive manual for these boards to guide them through this process. It's several inches thick. Very interesting reading if you want to go to sleep or you're an election geek like me. Probably the most important page for you all is what Paula has put up. It's called the County Canvas Checklist. This comes from that book. And this is a guide for the board and its staff as to what they need to check in every precinct in the county. So you can see at the top, they list the jurisdiction, might be the city of Mount Clemens, the precinct, precinct 2, and then the election date. And then the board members and or their staff work through this list. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but let me give you an overview of basically what this board is about. What will happen during the course of the 2 weeks is that all the local clerks will bring the paperwork, which is generated on election day. They'll bring the poll books. They'll bring the paperwork that reflects the tabulation of the votes and so forth. And there's a lot of paperwork. Some of you may have been election workers and you know how much has to be filled out and completed before you're done on election night. They will bring all of that to the board. They will not bring the ballots. And that's an important function. The board is not there to count ballots, to recount ballots. That is not their function. Their function is to ensure that the paperwork has been completed properly. And again, there's a lot of data that's got to be recorded. Their seal numbers have to be recorded. People have to sign, et cetera, et cetera. But they also check the math. And sometimes errors are discovered. You know, people working late on election night, maybe they made a math mistake, adding up the results in a particular precinct. And so they check the math. But again, they do not recount or count the ballots in any way. Under extraordinary circumstances, little feedback there.
Hello, please mute yourself.
They can call election workers in and say, Brewer, you forgot to sign this. Sign this. You know, you're an election worker. You should have signed this on election night. Or if there's some discrepancy in terms of the counting, they can ask to see ballots. But again, not to perform a recount or do anything beyond that. But it's to help them do their job. I mean, maybe somebody forgot to fill in a number and they actually have to go through the ballots to fill out a number. But that's very, very rare. And again, should not be mistaken for anything that even resembles a recount where every ballot is counted by hand again. So they will go through this checklist. You'll see that they'll have the poll book from every precinct in front of them. Again, a lot of things that have to be filled in on that poll book, signed at the end, and they have this little checklist that they'll go through very methodically. There is a certificate that the election inspectors review. That's the top of the second column. And there's some requirements about what has to be done there. Make sure that's done thoroughly. Then there's a statement of votes from every precinct based on the tabulator tapes and so forth. That all has to be double checked. And then they finally, here it says, verified poll book, tabulator tape, statement of votes, tabulator tape, and EMS report totals to match. Let me spend a minute on this because this unfortunately has become a controversial issue over the years when it's not. Michigan is very unusual in the country in requiring that the numbers of voters in the poll book exactly match the number of voters that are recorded by the tabulator machine. Now you may say, well, that makes sense. But in fact, you know, look, this is a human process. Human errors happen. Maybe they forgot to put a name in a poll book. Maybe they gave a voter a ballot and she left. It never went through the tabulator. Maybe they had to duplicate a ballot and that forgot to be recorded. And there's lots of very innocent, in my experience, human explanations for the failure to balance. But unfortunately, that failure to balance has been cited by people as some evidence of fraud or lack of integrity. It's not. Every ballot gets counted. This balancing issue is exactly what I just described. It's trying to make sure that, you know, we've accounted for every ballot, et cetera, et cetera. The precincts do not have to balance in order for the board to certify. That is not a requirement. The board is required to attempt to make them balance to try to figure out if there's a discrepancy, why. If they can't, in the end, that is not a reason not to certify. At that point, the board is required to report to the state which precincts, how many precincts they had where there was no balance. The only time this issue of a balance actually comes up is in a recount. In a recount situation, a precinct which is unbalanced cannot be recounted. So that's why it's important. The board will attempt to make it balance. And frankly, I've done a lot of recounts. And in the recount situation, if we encounter a precinct that's unbalanced, the law authorizes certain steps to be taken to try to bring it into balance. So it can be recounted. But that's the only consequence. There's no fraud. Every vote was counted. And again, this has been blown way out of proportion in terms of importance, and no other state requires this. In fact, I think Michigan law should be loosened in this regard to take into account the fact that there is always a small amount of human error. But again, that's the last entry on here. And boards will try very conscientiously to try to get things into balance. But in the end, if they can't, they don't, they will report that and move on. So for every precinct in the county, they go through this list and they check it all out. And then they get to the end of their process. And that's when the board meets. And all this is presented again, usually by the county clerk. She or he is keeping all the paperwork. And the board is presented with visual documents that they have to sign that indicates they have completed the canvass. And these are the results in the county. And those that become the official results in that county. They've checked the math, they've checked the paperwork, and these are the results in that county. So this is a place where we saw in 2020 where mischief can occur, and it did in Wayne County. You all may remember 2020 that for a few hours, that board was deadlocked. It would not certify. They eventually came to their senses and did the right thing. That is one of the things we're going to be watching for. As a matter of fact, on one of the report forms that you'll be sent, that is flagged. But that official action or inaction will not occur until the end of the process. I mean, people during the process may say things like, I'm not going to certify or whatever, but it's not actually official until they get to that penultimate moment at the end of the canvass and they present with that paperwork and some body or bodies refuses to sign it. All we ask you to do at that point is to promptly report that incident. We have mechanisms in place that are designed to deal with that. And there's really no further role for you at that point. But I'll tell you exactly what happens at that point if we get to that. There's really two options. First, the state board of canvassers will step in. If a county board refuses to certify or if they missed a deadline, the state board of canvassers will take over and they will certify that election. That's automatic under the statute. A backup to that is that we can go to court and get a court order for certification. And for nearly 2 centuries, the Michigan courts have been unanimous on this point that the job of these boards are what we call ministerial, clerical, non-discretionary. They have a duty to certify. They must certify. And if we have to get a court order to make them certify, we will. If we have to hold them in contempt for refusing to certify, we will. But that's all out of your hands. Once that refusal to certify occurs, all we ask you to do is alert us so that we can take the appropriate steps to remedy it. As you all may know, we have a large number of election deniers who were appointed in 2021 to, frankly, and I'm just going to say this because it's true, as Republican members of the boards of canvassers. So it may happen that there may be a vote not to certify. There may be 2 votes not to certify, and the board will deadlock. Those are the kind of things that we're watching for and will react to very vigorously when you let us know that it happens. So that's a flashpoint that we're going to be watching for, and that's something that we want you to watch for and alert us to. Once the board certifies, all that paperwork then makes its way to the Secretary of State, where her staff reviews all of it for accuracy. And then it's presented to the State Board of Canvassers at the meeting I told you would happen on November 28th, where that board also has a duty to certify, not to investigate, not to listen to allegations, not to recount. Their job is, if the math is right and the paperwork is filled out, certify. They have no choice. Hopefully we won't have a problem with that board. If we do, again, the remedy is to go to court. And I feel very confident about, ultimately, even if we have to go there, the Michigan Supreme Court ordering the county boards and the state board to certify if it comes to that. Hopefully it won't, but that's what we would do if we have to. So with that, Paula and Christina, I'll be glad to take questions.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna ask you to hold off on the questions. First of all, I'm embarrassed to say that I neglected to introduce Christina Schlitt, our co-president, who originated the Board of Canvassers program in 2020. She is going to be handling the questions in the chat. We have so many people on this call that that's the smoothest way to do it. So if you could put your questions in the chat. While you're doing that, I wanted to point out to you some of the forms that we're going to be asking you to fill out. These are the questions that are on the Google form, and it's just, our point is to show you what we're going to ask you, but we want you to go to the Google form, and you all will see this link. We're going to send that link to you in an email tomorrow, as well as over the weekend. So it's at the top of your email, we hope, and you can just refer to it after your shift. But we're asking your name, local league or the organization you're with, all this just data stuff. And then here are the key questions. Did you observe any out of balance precincts? If so, what were they? Did you observe any precincts for which the canvassers couldn't complete the checklist? And as Mark went over that checklist, we would advise you all to bring a copy of that with you to the board meeting. I know Christina mentioned that when she watches those, she brings one for every single precinct that they're reviewing. So she can do one for every precinct. That's up to you. Did you observe any attempts by canvassers or outside groups to slow down or disrupt the canvass process? As we indicated, these are public meetings, but hopefully everyone there is respectful of the board's work, like league people are, and will just be watching and listening. But if you see something, we're curious about that. We want to know, and if it's an issue, it will be elevated to the next level. If you were unable to observe any results of the canvass because you couldn't hear or you couldn't see, let us know. I know this is a chronic problem in Wayne County, but other counties may have the same issue. Then we're also asking, at the end of your shift, was the canvass work completed? As Mark said, every board of canvassers has their own culture. Sometimes, especially in the smaller communities, they'll just say, well, I think we're all done. Everybody's here. Let's go ahead and vote on the certification. And they'll do it right at the end of the canvass. Others will say, well, we're going to postpone the certification until the next day or whatever date works for them. So if the work was completed, we're again saying to you, if it did occur, did it pass? And if it did not, who chose not to certify? what was the name of the board members that did not certify? So these are the questions. You may want to have them in front of you so that when you do have the Google form, you know what we're asking you. They're pretty intuitive. You don't have to, study up a lot on this. And if you have some notes about the precincts, you should be able to answer that pretty easily. I also wanted to show you the one for the certification. Hold on just a minute. This is a much smaller form. This, if the certification was not done at the end of your shift and it's a separate meeting, these are the questions on that very simple certification report. When did it get done? The date, the time, was it certified? And if not, who voted no, and whether there were any comments or reasons given. If it was voted no, this will immediately get elevated to the election attorneys that are assisting us with this project, and we will let them handle it. So again, important. We also ask that you submit these reports within 2 hours of the time your shift ends or the meeting ends. You should be able to do these on your phone or a home computer. If you want to go home and do them from home, that's fine too. If you just can't figure out the Google form, you can submit that to us in a Word document and we'll enter it for you. But if at all possible, please do it on the Google form. Before we start questions, I did want to introduce Sarah Wirtz. Sarah, are you on? Can you say hello so everyone can figure out who you are? There she is.
Here. Hello.
Sarah is our project manager and has really been the controller for a lot of the forms that are coming out, and will be following this through the certification process. So she's a great help if you need it. Christina, I'm going to turn this over to you if you want to start handling some of the questions.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Mark, this will go to you. During the primary, one precinct was retabulated because they could not rectify the mismatch of people voted versus the votes tabulated. Was this an unusual event?
Yes, but entirely within the power of the board. And again, they were not doing a recount. They were trying to reconcile, make sure there was balance. But yes, that's permissible.
Okay, this one I'm not quite sure how clear it is. It's whose responsibility is it to assess if the form from the certifier is filled out accurately or not, I believe, even if signed?
Right, that all falls to the county clerk. She or he essentially function as the secretary to this board to make sure the paperwork's filled out properly and signed. And then the clerk actually has the duty the next day after they're certified to send the materials to the Secretary of State. So that all falls on the clerk.
Thank you. Another one, Mark. What is the purpose of the board if it's to automatically certify?
Well, again, I don't want to overstate it. Automatic, maybe a little too strong of a word. They do discover errors. I've seen this happen once or twice in my career here in Michigan, where the board discovered a math error that changed the result in the election because the election was close, right? Somebody transposed numbers or didn't add things up right. It happens. People are human. So that's an important function. The other thing is, I think, look, it's an independent entity. It's bipartisan. So the idea is to assure the partisans in the state, at least, the two major parties, that the process is running properly because they've got the representatives there keeping an eye on it. So even if nothing changes in the process, I think the transparency is really, really important.
Thank you. Another one is, will we be able to identify the board members easily?
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to. There's only 4 of them. Sometimes I wear name tags. or they'll have little identifying blocks of wood or whatever it is in front of them. Yeah, you'll be able to figure that out.
Okay, thank you. Can we take phones, clipboards, etc., into the room?
Yes, but no photography of any kind. So be very careful about that. And obviously don't use any of those things in a way that causes disturbance. If you need to take a phone call, step out. But yeah, if you want to bring in a laptop and use it to take notes and that kind of thing, that's entirely permissible.
Okay, thank you. This is a procedural question. So Paula, are we to contact the county clerk ourselves as to the days and hours they will be canvassing?
Every county has a leader. A lot of them are the local league presidents that are, many of whom are on this call. Christina and I are handling some of them. Sarah is handling the big one in Wayne County. Your leader will be getting in touch with you probably by tomorrow or Saturday to tell you that I'm the leader. These are when the dates of the Board of Canvassers are meeting. But we pretty much know at this point when they're meeting. We're waiting for a couple of stray emails, but mostly we know that, and the signups on the Sign Up Genius reflect those times. If you are not sure and want to check with your leader, they'll be able to give you more information.
Thank you. Edna Black, your question, I would suggest that you email Sarah Wirtz directly. She'll be able to walk you through the issue. She said that she tried to sign up for Genesee, but got booted to Alcona County.
Yeah, I'll be able to help her with that. I understand what's happening. Easy fix. And I'm going to put my email in the chat. And then you can contact me tomorrow. I'll give you a call. All right.
Okay, thank you. This goes to Paula. If I'm not available on November 9th and only available on the 10th in the afternoon, am I not able to serve in the function we're being trained for tonight?
No, you can, I mean, yes, you can serve at any time that the board is meeting. Probably 50% of the boards start their work the afternoon of the 9th, the day after the election, and the rest don't start until the 10th. As Mark said, by law, they have to start by that Thursday, the 10th, but we need observers until the process ends. So in the larger counties like Wayne County, Oakland, Macomb, that may go for 14 days. And when we're needing 3 observers every day, you can only imagine how many that is. In the smaller counties, they may finish actually by the 10th. We have the added complication this year of Veterans Day falling on the 11th. And it was pretty interesting that about half the counties, despite that being a federal holiday, are still continuing their work through the 11th. But as I said, others are not. We've tried to reflect that fact on our Sign Up Genius worksheet so that you don't inadvertently sign up for the 11th. But sometimes those get past us. With 83 counties, there's a lot of details to figure out. So, but yeah, by all means, if you can't do the 9th, find another day. There's plenty.
Thank you. Mark, this is kind of for you too. If certification doesn't happen for a week or so, what happens if no observer is present when the certification occurs?
Well, they're gonna do their business whether anybody's there or not. And frankly, we want them to. We don't want them to stall certifying because nobody's watching. So I'll leave that up to the rest of you procedurally.
Yep.
But they should certify regardless of who's there.
Plus the certification is public record and the leaders of that county will be able to verify the certification once it's completed. Mark, this is for you. How does the BOC handle affidavits? Do they check the signatures?
I'm trying to think about what affidavits you could be referring to. I don't recall any affidavits that they should be checking as part of this verification process. Obviously on election day, some voters have to sign an affidavit to indicate I lost my ballot, right? My AV ballot, so I'm going to get another one. The board would not check that. That would be in the records of that polling place, but that's not something the board would check.
Excuse me, that was my question. This is when they come, because I work elections as well, but this is when they come in and they don't have an ID, they sign an
Oh,
affidavit.
that.
So don't do that. And I thought that they audited that. I thought the Board of Canvassers audited that. And I was just curious of how they do that.
Right. Thank you, Linda, for clarifying. Yeah, that's the affidavit on the back of the application to vote. I usually don't think of that as an affidavit, but it is. You're right. That is not checked by the Board of Canvassers.
Can I jump in on that? I understand that if a voter signs an affidavit, they actually have 6 days to present evidence to the clerk's office. Where am I getting something mixed
No.
up here?
Yeah, and if I may, just quickly, if
Please.
a voter either has to show a photo ID or sign the affidavit on the back of that application. If they do either one, they vote a regular ballot, which gets tabulated, and they have no further obligations. There is no question. That was a valid vote. It's only if there's some question about their identity or their residency that they might vote what's called a provisional ballot.
Okay.
We've seen a lot fewer of those after Prop, I get it wrong, Prop 3 of 218.
Yep.
So there would be those. Those are the ones that you get 6 days to correct, Sarah. But there are very, very few of those. And that is in the hands of the local clerks. That's not an issue that comes before this board.
Okay, so it wouldn't affect what the board is doing if someone came in on day 6. Okay, okay.
But what I was addressing, it isn't provisional ballots. It's actually all the affidavits, which aren't very many. I thought the Board of Canvassers audited them to check to make sure the signature was accurate, because if it's not, then that's a felony.
No, there's no requirement that this board audit those signatures.
The clerk may do so.
Clerk might not get them. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All
Mark,
right, thank you.
you said that an unbalanced precinct count is not a reason for canvasser to not certify. Would you-
Correct. Correct. Yes, this unbalanced precinct is not a basis to refuse to certify.
Okay. Okay, the people are asking about forms. Paula will be sending the forms to everybody who's registered. She has your email. And
Right, along with the link of this training, in case you want to watch it again.
our precinct certifications, Mark, this is for you. Our precinct certifications divided by AV and in person.
Many jurisdictions now use these AV boards, and they are treated as separate counting entities. So in that case, that would come to the canvassing board, the Board of Canvassers, as a separate item to be canvassed. There are still some places which follow the old practice of they take the AV ballots in the clerk's office and they send them out to the precincts, and they get tabulated in the precincts. In those places, you won't get any AV board results to canvass. The board will only be canvassing the precincts. But that is a shrinking process. Most, in my experience, particularly large counties, use the AV boards.
Thank you. Are there legal reasons to refuse to certify?
No. If that board is, and they will be, at the end of that process, they're going to be presented with the paperwork that says we've checked all the math. We've checked to make sure that everything's been signed and the I's dotted and the T's crossed. They have no choice but to certify.
Okay, thank you. There were a couple to that extent. If the math doesn't add up, what then?
Well, that's where, as was mentioned earlier, they try to figure out, why doesn't the math add up? Again, was something transposed? Were the ballots not counted accurately? They may bring them in and retabulate them to try to figure out that problem. It's hard for me to deal with that in the abstract because I got to tell you, friends, there's so many different ways that things might not add up and might not balance. But the board will work very hard to try to make sure that they all do and that the numbers add up.
Okay, thank you, Mark. There are a number of questions about procedure, and if names have been missed, please reach out to Sarah Wirtz and let her know if somebody was missed off Sign Up Genius, and she will make sure that it's amended. And any other questions to that effect? Sarah is the person that we need to go to. Now we have another question, and I'm not sure if Mark or Paula can answer this. Are there critical counties where LWV observers are needed?
Yes, thanks for that, Christina, because I had forgotten to mention that. There are critical counties, and what makes a county critical is if especially more than one of the board members has been identified as an election denier and who may very well not certify the election for political reasons. So there are some of those counties. Some of them are in league areas, but we do have a number of counties, particularly in the smack in the middle of the state where we don't have a lot of league presence. And I'll just mention a few of these. If you have any like-minded, nonpartisan friends that you think might want to do some civic work to help with this process, we'd love to have them join our team. But some of those are Allegan, Aranac, Gladwin County, Gratiot County, Hillsdale, Huron, Ionia, Mount Calm, Mount Morenci, Ogama, St. Clair. There are, as I said, there are others where we are worried, but those ones that I just mentioned, we're more worried because we don't have a lot of signups yet. So if you have friends in those counties that might want to do some public service, let us know and we'll be happy to put them to work on a shift. And it's true that most of those counties are so small that the canvassing is going to be done by the 10th. I also wanted to point out one thing, and I know, Mark, you've said this a few times. Just because a precinct doesn't balance is not a reason that it shouldn't be certified, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, we have another question. Are there any negative consequences to a member of the board who refuses to certify?
Yes. Fortunately, we haven't had to resort to those. Any of them who are attorneys could face grievances. And I've been part of efforts to do that. We have filed grievances against many of the attorneys behind the frivolous litigation in 2020. Members can be removed from these boards. At least one county clerk has done that on the west side of the state to a recalcitrant board member who refused to certify a special election. There are also a possibility of criminal penalties. I will tell you that one of the incentives for people to sign and certify is that if they do not, I don't think the county's under any obligation to defend them in a subsequent lawsuit or criminal proceeding. They're on their own because they are acting outside of their authority. We hate to have to say those things to them, Christina, but we will if we have to. And if they disobey that court order to certify, we will hold them in contempt. We're not messing around here.
Thank you. There's a question here. An observer has been accepted to the Board of Canvassers. Can that person serve the dual role of observer and canvasser?
I would not mix those roles. I would stick to your official role as a canvasser. I think I saw something in the chat though that, after the meeting's over for the day or whatever, can the canvasser share what she or he saw or heard? Sure. Yeah, you can do that. Oh, you don't betray any confidences that were shared among the board or particularly with the board's attorney.
Okay, thank you. I guess we need to clarify what we mean by an AV board. I think it's the AV counting board. Are there separate boards of canvassers for the absentee, and won't they be included with the rest of the ballots?
And I'm sorry if I was unclear in that regard. All of the results of every precinct, whether it's a polling place precinct or whether it's an absentee voting counting board, come to this canvassing board to be reviewed. All of them.
And AV is short for absentee voting ballot.
Right. It's an AV, it's AVCB, absent voter counting board. I'm sorry for resorting to jargon. I've been doing this for 40 years. My apologies.
Okay. And I think we need to clarify one more time, what exactly is the board certifying that the paperwork was done? You're muted, Mark.
Yeah, they are certifying the results of the election in that county. After they reviewed the paperwork and reviewed the math, you certify that these are the election results in our county.
Okay. Now there are a number of procedural questions, and once again, I direct you to Sarah Wertz or Paula Bowman, but much of this can be answered by Sarah, so her email is in the chat. Please reach out to her. Yes, you can observe around the state. You can observe wherever you are willing to drive and sit. Okay, I don't see any other questions that can't be answered by going to Sarah for procedural items, and I think Mark has answered all of those that are of the legal nature.
I wanted to share one more thing. I forgot to do this. This is the name badge template that we will send to you, which is nothing more than a piece of white paper with the logo. You would cut it out and write your name, or you could do it on the computer, whatever works for you. Or for those of you who came in late, if you want me to send you one of these name tags, or I usually have been sending a couple of them. They're sticky on the back so they can slap right on your shirt. Let me know, put your name and address in the chat, and I'll put them in the mail to you tomorrow so that you should have them by election day. Thank you so much for being on this call, for listening, for being able to help us with this important project. We at the end of the primary in August, we had a debrief meeting, which was just a great opportunity to tell some good stories about what happened at all those board meetings. So we probably will do that again in December. Watch for that email. We're just trying to get through the election right now. So that meeting is not set yet, but as I said, we so appreciate your help, and we are so grateful to you, Mark, for stepping in and helping us again understand all this process and sharing with authority what has to be done by the Board of Canvassers. If there are no other questions, we'll say good night, and you can get all of this information tomorrow in a link to the training session and all the materials. Thanks, everybody.